This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, or legal advice. Any examples or frameworks discussed are general in nature and may not be suitable for all investors. All investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. Past experiences and planning approaches do not guarantee future results. So today I wanted to talk about two different client families. Both experienced a death in the family, and what's really interesting in comparing the two situations is the family with the greater number of dollars in terms of their net worth actually ended up in a more challenging situation because of the lack of preparation that they had going into the loss of a loved one. And I anonymized the names here, but the stories are true. So first we'll start off with Sean's family. Sean did really well financially, accumulated about $4 million across investment accounts in real estate. And it looks like a success story from the outside looking in. But behind the scenes, things were a lot more complicated. There were some family struggles, and then that led to unpreparedness for the next generation. And the assets had, I'd call it moderate complexity, but the rest of his plan didn't follow alongside that. So the estate plan was incomplete. Communication between generations was pretty inconsistent from what I saw. The preparation was really minimal. And Sean unexpectedly passed. And when the assets went to the next generation, there was just a lot of unpreparedness. And that's where some real problems began. Now, from what I witnessed, there was just no readiness at all for the incoming responsibility, not financially, not practically. And then, the situation was very emotional. So that added another layer of difficulty into the situation. There's multiple accounts, rental real estate, some complex tax decisions that needed to be made, and also a change in spending decisions. What happened next? You could probably predict it, but there was overspending, some tax mistakes that were uncovered. The estate process was a bit chaotic, and there was just this constant air of instability despite being significant wealth involved. And all this could have been prevented with just a little more thoughtful planning and communication. And then contrast this with Rob, who didn't have quite the level of Sean's financial success, net worth of about $3 million. The difference was he was really intentional with a lot of the different aspects of managing his personal wealth. There's basically a lot more preparation involved. He prioritized teaching his kids how money works. He had really disciplined savings habits that he passed on to his kids. The estate plan was clear and structured. He also used life insurance to provide some liquidity in the event of his death. And basically, he just wanted to make sure everything would go smoothly for the next generation. So when Rob passed unexpectedly, his family experienced something very different than Sean's family. His children were able to graduate college debt-free. His wife had a business which she was able to continue and grow. The estate process was really smooth and efficient. And ultimately, his kids were able to use the momentum that he started for them and maintain some financial independence and confidence. And what they inherited wasn't just money, it was understanding of how everything was going to work. And I saw a really clear through line. Even though Sean had more money, a net worth of $4 million, the estate plan was incomplete, the financial education was minimal, and the family outcome was basically struggle. Whereas Rob had a smaller net worth of $3 million, but the estate plan was really well structured. The financial education was very intentional. And even though he passed, there was this platform of stability that helped everyone that survived it. Now, when it comes to leaving a legacy, I think that setting things up so you can manage what happens to your wealth after you're gone is really crucial. And I think that outcome is driven by basically three things. One is financial education. Your kids, they don't learn financial responsibility just by being adjacent to money. They learn it because they're involved. They help make decisions. They experience consequences and then get feedback so that they can improve, and just having good communication between generations. And if your kids haven't made meaningful financial decisions yet, they're probably not going to be ready, regardless of how old they are. Number two is having a true estate plan, not just a stack of documents. And the documents are very important. A real plan answers questions like who makes decisions and how? How are the assets actually going to be transferred? Where is the liquidity going to come from? Does everyone understand these elements? How do we deal with the tax situation? How is this going to feel for the people involved? Talking about it ahead of time is good, because even though it's a really tough subject, the reality is we all end up facing it at some point. We should have an open line of communication so there's less guesswork when that time actually comes. And then the third one is strategic simplicity. So I think that complexity can be an enemy of a successful transition. Sometimes complexity is hard to avoid, depending on your situation, but at higher net worth, you probably are going to experience some complexity. And that's why you should be intentional about where and how you simplify. So there was a clear structure in Rob's case. There were defined rules. There was liquidity through insurance and a tax-aware design. So it was thoughtful, and it ended up going exactly how they intended for it to happen, even though it was unexpected that he passed. So the difficult question that you should probably ask yourself is, if something happened to you tomorrow, would your family experience Sean's outcome or Rob's? And I'm not talking about how much you've accumulated, but this is based on how well you've prepared everyone. And I think if you're serious about multi-generational planning, this is where you should start if you haven't already. You hold some structured family conversations about money. You gradually involve your kids in real financial decisions. Stress test your estate plan. See where, if something went wrong, how it would be dealt with. Simplify where possible. And then align your strategy with your actual goals, not just tax minimization. Because I think at the end, it's not just a goal to leave behind the wealth, but to leave behind a family that knows what to do with it and can be good stewards of that wealth. Basically, money without preparation creates pressure, but money with preparation creates a pathway to freedom. And I don't think your legacy is going to be defined by the size of your estate. I think it's going to be defined by what your family is able to do with it.